I wanted to let people know about your story and how all this transpired because I know that you played in the NFL before. So I wanted to ask you your story, your actual story, even before football or business, and what led to these accomplishments that you have now.
Yeah, so my story in a quick rundown is I'm from East Texas, and if anybody knows Texas in general, probably the main area that uh, African Americans migrated to when they were trying to get away from the slave trade and everything was East Texas. So a lot of our original ancestors and descendants went to East Texas because you could actually work, you could get land, and you could start. So like where I'm from in East Texas is a highly populated area of African Americans, but it's country. So we grew up in the country, and I grew up with a single mom, and 4 kids, and dad wasn't around. Similar story, humble beginnings. And one of the biggest things that I learned real fast is, if you get down the wrong path, as some of my brothers did, then it's you can make decisions that really aren't who you are, but you're just in that environment, so it just becomes a part of your nature. So me being the baby, my 2 older brothers went to prison. One went to prison, one was in and out of jail. And my oldest brother really would write me and talk to me and tell me, hey, man, you got to stay focused. So that being said, man, I've always been a guy that works hard. I grew up working at a pig farm, but I also had my own business. When I was 11 years old, I had my own lawnmower business. And the crazy thing is, I didn't understand back then, but I get it now. Bro, I wasn't just mowing yards, residential yards. I had commercial properties. Like my mom would take me to the city because it was like a 30-minute drive to get to Tyler, which is our main big city. And like our doctor, our dentist, they would let me mow their commercial buildings, and they would pay me. And I remember I would mow the yard or mow the property, weed eat it, trim it, bag everything, and I would sit under the tree until my mom would come back and get me.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't like this was in the 70s. I'm an 80s baby. I'm 30-something years old. So, but I realized that taught me a lot. That it taught me no matter where you start, that's not who you are. And it's no matter where you're trying to go, it's not predicated on your current situation. And so it kind of gave me that entrepreneurial mindset. And I had that business. I had a couple more businesses that I was running. And then I started working at Dairy Queen, Albertsons, stacking groceries. And then all that was just trying to do it the right way. Because my brothers always said, obviously it's easy money out here in the streets, but if you do it the long way, the hard way, you'll be able to build on top of that. So that led me into just having that mindset. And then my mom ended up having a heart attack when I was like 16. And so it made me grow up real quick as a man. She didn't pass, but she was in tough shape. So I really started focusing on, okay, what's my path out of the hood? And it was through books and through sports. And so a lot of times people think, oh man, he was just a jock or football player. My first couple full ride college offers were academically. So I ended up having about 18 to 20 scholarships, and I chose Texas A&M, came here, played football, 3-time academic all-conference. I ended up having a solid career, and then I got drafted to the Packers. Was a top draft pick. Brett Favre was my quarterback. Aaron Rodgers and I were in the same draft class, and now that dude's still spinning the ball, finna be a Hall of Fame quarterback. So he was our first pick. I was the second pick. Me and Nick Collins were the second pick that year. And so I ended up getting injured, bro. Career-ending injury. I actually had a head-to-head injury on Monday Night Football, and I got paralyzed. And so going through that experience and just trying to come back from that is kind of what gave me that extra strength to have the faith to even be an entrepreneur. So I had to recreate myself. I had to start over. And one of the things I tried to focus on was financial literacy. So it's a long answer to your question, but
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, that's a real answer. So when you made the transition so how long did you play in the NFL?
I actually got, like I said, drafted in 2005, and I got injured my rookie year. So,
Wow.
I didn't do this until I look back. The stat I looked at was, first off, it's so hard to even get a college, offer. Then it's even harder to play in college, especially at a major university like Texas A&M. then it's even harder to even be healthy enough to get drafted. And so I realized I went through crazy numbers, like winning a lottery to get drafted. But when I got injured, I was the only person in that draft class that had a career-ending injury our rookie year. So now that I know that, I'm like, okay, God, what were you trying to do in that situation, and what can I learn from that? And I think that is just that a lot of times people will come up to me and say, hey, I'm praying for you. God's got something better for you. Well, when you live in it and you in it, you're not trying to hear that, bro. Making that transition, I try to really figure out, okay, who am I? And when you know, a lot of times the way that we think that we can get out of the hood is become a rapper, sell drugs, or be an athlete. And it's like there's so many more things that are in us that we can become and that we can be. And I'm not saying that someone is casting that on us, but that's the environment we're in. When you are in that environment where it's the crabs in the bucket, everybody's trying to pull you down. You only feel like it's tough to try to be in a positive mindset. So when I made that transition, I just said, okay, who am I? What am I? And what else can I do with my life? And I really started focusing on financial literacy. And that book, Robert Kiyosaki, Who Took My Money, that book changed my life.
Mm.
Yep.
The first book I bought of his was actually Cash Flow Quadrant. That's the one I bought first. Most people started with Rich Dad Poor Dad. I did read that before, but that's not where I started. I started at Cash Flow Quadrant, and then I've got another one actually right over here to the right of me. Own Your Own Corporation. So yeah, I started that way too a little bit. I read a ton of books. I'm always reading.
Good.
Where I don't know how I started. I don't know what book I actually started on. But so when you made what led you to this is the thing. So when you decided to do financial literacy and real estate, is that the main way that you got led to it, by reading that book, or was there another influence or another mentor after you got out of the NFL?
Yeah, so I have never had a mentor. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I can truly say that God in heaven, and I'll say God in heaven, he's my Father in heaven and on earth. He's truly been the God that's my guiding principle. And it's easy to say that, but it's another thing to walk that out, because when you read something and you realize there's no bridge for you to get from one side to the next, you got to have faith, but then you got to follow that up with action. And then a lot of times your action is taking one blind step in front of the next, knowing that, okay, there is a plan for me. I don't see it all, but I got to take this step. I got to take action. And that's one of the things I'm always encouraging people is it's one thing to pray. It's another thing to have enough faith to take the action. And a lot of times in my community, I don't see action. And I'm not, hell, in my own life, there was times where I didn't see action. But what I realized is in order for that faith to be enacted, it's like God can't steer a parked car. You got to actually get on the gas and start going somewhere. And then he can actually put you on path. But what led me to that is in 2008, before, when you get drafted, everybody thinks you make all this money. Everybody ain't Tom Brady. Tom Brady's been in the league a million years, Super Bowls, 3, 4, 5 contracts. I will say it's just a start on life. Like, you don't really make your big money until you get to your second and third contracts. And obviously, me being injured my rookie year, I didn't do that. Mm-hmm. But I did take that and say, okay, this is giving me a start on life. What do I do with it? And as the market in 2008 started a downturn, I went to my financial advisor and said, dude, you got to get my money out of the market. I said, if I'm going to lose money or if I'm going to lose on it, I'm going to lose on my own education. And I didn't even understand how profound that was at the time. But now that I look back at it, I'm like, if I'm going to lose money, then it needs to be on my education, not the stock market, not some stockbroker. They're learning on my money. So I got it out. And one of the things he challenged me, he said, well, what are you going to do with it? I said, I don't know, but give me 24 hours. I'll call you back. I literally got in the car today with my fiance at the time, now my wife. We went to Barnes & Noble, and I went down the aisle with a grocery basket, and I just started pushing books. Accounting, financial literacy, entity structure and franchising, real estate, anything. And I was like, I'm just going to start reading anything I get my hands on. Well, take it up until that point, I hated reading. I read the Bible, and I read one book front to back in 6th grade. I didn't read. I wasn't a reader. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm the type of guy, is if this is what I got to do to be successful, the same way that I had to be out there lifting weights in 105 degrees, then I'm going to do it. And I'm not only going to do it, I'm going to be the best at it. So I just decided instead of working the muscles of my body, I'm going to work the muscles of my mind. And I really started focusing on that because they say if you want to hide something from someone, put it in a book. They won't read it. So I said, okay, I'm finna just start diving in. And I took that information. I called him back like at the end of that week and I said, I'm investing in real estate and I'm going to teach myself how to do it. Well, take it, I'm 23, 24, never had a job besides being in the NFL and my job in high school. And he sent me my money, man. And from that point, I moved back to College Station. My wife and I bought a house. I had a couple actually NFL job offers to be strength coach or assistant receiver coach, and I actually turned them down. At that moment in time, I decided I didn't want to work for anybody else. I only wanted to work for myself. Because there was a season of, once I got injured, I was trying to get jobs and people would tell me, you don't have any experience and you don't have this and you don't have that. And all I was getting was the door shut in my face.
Mm-hmm.
I think because, oh man, you played at this major university or you played in the NFL, all these jobs are going to be just sitting there waiting on you when you're done. Well, they wasn't. And I'm not saying I was perfect, but I look at what I had achieved in college. I'm like, man, some opportunity should present itself by now. But it was just God letting me know, like, no, you're going to work for yourself. And so all that is just a faith move and just self-education and then starting my own business. And so I started investing in real estate. We started buying anything we could around our campus and started tearing those things down, rezoning them. And every time I would go to someone and say, hey, can I work for you? Would you be willing to mentor me? They would always say in a nice way, I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it goes back to when people ask me, who is your mentor? I say God, because I would go back feeling down about those days and I would pray to God about it. And he'd be like, no, son, read this book. I'm going to give you the wisdom. And so one of the things I always tell people when they ask me for encouragement or advice, I say, God says it in his word that he'll freely give us the wisdom, right? But in order to apply wisdom, you got to have what? Knowledge. So you can't apply wisdom without knowledge. And so he told me clearly, I'll give you the wisdom. If you read the book of Proverbs, that's all it talks about is wisdom singing out to us. But we got to go get the knowledge. So that means that's an action move, like you said. So I got to go read the books. I got to read the blogs. I got to listen to the podcast. I got to create the information. I got to study the properties on LoopNet and Realtor.com and Zillow. So I have to educate and get the knowledge. And then as I do that, then that wisdom will come down from him. And then it surpasses what someone else could have taught me. So really, that's pretty much how I started doing it. And man, we were blessed to build that up, developing rental properties. And we started tearing them down, rezoning them, and had a really good success doing that. And that led me into getting my real estate license. People kept asking me, can you help me do what you do? And I said, well, I don't have a license. So I ended up getting my license. And teaching other people how to sell real estate. And I kind of started my own brokerage. Once again, another faith move, because I started at Keller Williams. I was there for like a year and a half. And usually you're supposed to be at a brokerage for at least 4 years before you can start your own company. Well, a year and a half in, I was like, man, I got to find a loophole. I'm gonna go do this on my own. So I started TM5 Properties. And it was just an idea on a napkin that I wrote down. And now in less than 7-8 years, we just hit 700 million in volume. So we're tracking $1 billion in sales, and it's a startup company that my wife and I started.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's a good story. That's crazy. And yeah, I can relate, like just starting at random. For me, it was really corporate racism that made me decide, like, no, I'm doing it now. Yeah. And I was going to be an entrepreneur, but you get in that mind state, well, I'll wait till I have this much money. I'm going to try to save up some money. I'm going to try to do such and such. Well, it made me be like, nah, I'm not going to save no money. I don't have no money. I mean, in fact, I was in debt. So I just decided to do it like that. Basically pushing yourself to the fire and going through, for me, it was a period of isolation. I think you get closer. We were talking about God, and I think you actually get closer to God when you're completely more of an isolated state. I also refrained from any sexual contact, being completely isolated and just running the ideas through my head and then taking the action and getting on the phone and, and that actually it did allow me to innovate different things that I wouldn't have read anywhere. Because it's just people just don't even think like that. When you have zero, you have to be resourceful, and I think that's where a lot of your power came from. Is when you have zero, you think a lot of all the different ways to do things on like a shoestring or whatever, because you have nothing. So it's just like, okay, if I want to get point A to point B, then how do I do that? Nobody's going to tell you. You just have to try stuff, and you're so resourceful. You'll think of any type of way to do it. It's so funny because you'll find a way. Like when people think that money's going to save you, and I raise money for people and stuff now, and because people like that. But the reality is, to be honest, money's not really going to save you. It's actually more about like strategy, marketing, knowledge, like you were saying. You have to have the system basically to put the money in. Yeah. If you don't know to do that part, then the money is really useless. Actually, it could be a weapon of destruction. So I try to really ask people what they want to do with the money and stuff like that. I'm talking too much, but that just resonated with me a lot.
Yeah, that's good, bro.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you your opinion on, because obviously we touched on this a little bit, but just to dive a little bit deeper on why it's important to know how to transition and learn investing, financial literacy. Why it's important to basically start doing that and learning that by any means necessary. Like, what are the main important reasons why for you? You would tell someone else coming in and asking?
Yeah, I think what I would encourage people is there's a couple things that kind of resonated with me as I watched my mom work multiple jobs. Hell, I had multiple jobs. I literally was working 2-3 jobs at a time before I was able to get my football scholarship. Mm-hmm. I probably would have worked jobs, but they wouldn't let us. I would just say, first off, just give yourself options. Because I always say, people a lot of times talk about, like you said, the money or whatever. But I feel like a person with options is a person with power. If you look at any situation where someone has no options, then they have no power. Mm-hmm. Who has options has power. So options meaning that, okay, if I have this revenue stream, I got 3 rental houses over here paying me $1,000 a month. If I've invested in my roommate's business and I'm a 50-50 partner on his new startup and that thing is growing and starting to produce revenue, but I'm working my 9 to 5 over here, and then on the weekends I got my own business. It's an online business that I'm running out of my garage, right? Well, if my garage business doesn't do well, I still have my 9 to 5, my roommate's business, and my rental property. And vice versa, you can exchange that a million different ways. And so one of the things that I don't really care about is people say a millionaire. Because in the hood, when you hear $1 million, you think, oh man, I want to be a millionaire. That's all I'm talking about. Right. Dollars doesn't get you anywhere in 2020. So what I've learned is it's not even about the million. If you told me, would you give me $1 million cash? Or would you give me 5 rental houses that are at $1,000, $1,500 a month? I'll take the 5 rental houses at $1,500 a month. Mm-hmm. Revenue stream, this passive. And so, because now, let's just say if those 5 houses are all worth $500,000 a piece, then you can do the math. Mm-hmm. It's $2.5 million, so I probably got $1 million of equity right there. I can refinance, pull $1 million out. I still have the asset paying me $1,500 a month. Right. So I got $1 million on 5 houses, and you took the cash. Right. So it's just thinking like that. I think that's what we got to reprogram ourselves, because it's not always about the money coming in. It's about, it ain't even about saving anymore, because when you just put money in a bank account and try to save it, well, CDs, money markets are paying us less than 2%. Well, that don't even cover inflation. Yeah. It's about investing in income-producing assets is what I say. Invest in income-producing assets that are appreciating and not depreciating.
I wanted to ask you too. And so, and in my head, And there's this concept called like turning the corner. And after you turn that corner, like things are gonna start like putting themselves together. You can see after you turn the corner, you can kind of see like, I see how to do this. I just need to repeat this, and then so on and so forth. Um, when did you first turn the corner, and what did that feel like when you first like in real estate? It was probably like a good property or maybe a good flip or something like that. First one that really like started. You're like, okay, I see.
I'll
What
tell
was
you,
that?
yeah, my first one was I was 26, and I had bought 2 old dilapidated HUD duplexes. And I don't ever speak down on HUD. I grew up in a HUD home.
Mm-hmm.
But they were HUD homes, and I was renting them to these families. And then I realized they were right by the state. They're right by the stadium at Texas A&M, right by the college. And I said, man, if I can buy these other ones, I could not only buy those duplexes, I could turn around, replat the whole street, and get more density. So I replatted the street and I swept all those down and then built brand new houses. Well, I knew I was onto something when I put my sign up and I leased that whole block in 1 week. That's when I was like, okay. People told me it was crazy because they were like, why are you tearing down those houses? That didn't make sense to pay for a house, then tear it down. It was against the grain, and it wasn't what people were doing because everybody was remodeling them and keeping them at the time. And I just chose to go that route. And still to this day, I've done a lot of projects, a lot of rental development projects. That's still one of the best projects I've ever done. The cash flow is probably more than a lot of my deals. But yeah, that's when I knew. That was that moment where I was like, I think I'm on to something.
Yep. Yeah, and that's being resourceful. You do things differently than everybody else, basically on accident when you don't have any guidance.
No.
Because you're like, let's try this. I think entrepreneurship is all about that. Actually, it's just about kind of just being resourceful, learning from mistakes, being insane enough to think that you can string it together with really no resources. It's usually people don't start with anything. I see a lot of complaints. Sometimes I'll see complaints just online, stuff like that, or just hear it or whatever. And the whole thing is like, I think that people really believe that most people who are successful, like it was given. And actually, that's really actually not true. I think it's around 81%. It's like anywhere between 79 and 81. It kind of changes.
Self-made millionaires
are self-made, and we're complaining like, they're just inherit. Like, dude, they didn't. Like most of them didn't inherit it. They actually all the things that you were afraid to do. They actually just did those, sacrificed and probably lost money, relationships, time. You lose so much time. You make real sacrifice. You make life sacrifice. People think it's just money. No, that's like your minimal sacrifice. You make a lot of sacrifices generally when you go after and chase an entrepreneurship. You really do, and it could be years before you turn that corner. Everybody's story is different. So, it might take one person a couple of years, and it might take somebody else 17 years. It might take somebody, so you don't know. Like I made that post about Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc didn't really hit till he was 52 years old. 52, and he had been trying. It wasn't like he was sitting there. He was like, Ray Kroc was a hustler. He was trying everything. He was go out there and try to sell everything. So his store was different, but it ended with a bang.
Yep.
People, even if we don't even like McDonald's, will probably go sometime during the year. Like you don't even have to. I don't even like McDonald's really, but I'll probably go get some fries at some point. And that took him till 52 to pull that off. And and most entrepreneurs, I think that we know innately that that's who we are. I think really young. I know for me it was, and that means that you're trying. Because for me, I was, I was trying as a teenager. So I think that you were really trying that whole time. So the journey actually starts when you're like 12, 13, 14, 17, whenever you have that little spark, because you're already going to start working and reading and doing all the things that you need to do to get there. So that's really how long the journey actually takes. Even if you pinpointed on something and that turned around in like a year or two, well, that still culminated because, many years of experience. Like for me, I think it was, 14 years really before something really started to really work out like that. But the brand that I started, it only took maybe a year and a half or something like that, but it wasn't really a year and a half. It was like 15, you know what I mean? It was a long time. Now I can use the tools that I was forced to learn, as, a kid, really. From the kid, when they threw me on the phones all the way to now, I was forced to learn those things and read all those things. And now all those skills and lessons and experience, and even college, I went to college as well. All those things culminate into success. So, and I think it happens just the way it is. I don't know why it's like that, but it's just the way it is. You have to go through it. And so when people think that, people are just handed things, I'm like, I feel a way about it. I'm like, no, you're insane if you believe that. I'm like, you're insane, dude. And there's not too many silver spoons. Even to be honest, even from what I see, even regardless of race, it's really not that many silver spoons out here like that.
No.
Silver spoons that's slim. Like when your dad owns like, Target or something like that. That's not everybody. You're talking slim across the board, really. It's just slimmer with us, but that's really slim. We talked a lot about the background, which is crazy. I think I'm glad I did this because I want people to be exposed to stories like that.
Yeah.
What is something? So for somebody who wants to get out there, what's some tips? What's a good way to enter the game? What do you feel like the strongest way to enter the game? What's some real life tips?
Yeah, what I would encourage people to do is there's so many ways to get into real estate. But I think a lot of times is just bite off the piece that you can handle. And if that's buying one rental house or one duplex, or buy a duplex, move in one side, rent out the other side, then you can manage it in your next door.
Mm-hmm.
That teaches you, because you're in the game.
Right.
What you understand is you can go and buy your first home with an FHA loan, which is 3.5% to 5% down. Move in it, stay in it a couple years, then go buy another one and keep that one rented out. So there's so many ways to get in the game. When people are spending money on a million other things, there's no excuses at this point. Like you said, it's a sacrifice. I think a lot of times, like even with me, people just write me off. Oh, well, he played in the NFL, so then they just don't listen to what I went through to get to this point. Well, what pisses me off about that? How the fuck do people think I got to the NFL? I had to work for it. Wow. I got beat up. My knees don't work right. My ankles are beat up. I was in 105 degrees year-round working out and running around and dehydrating myself. I only got paid to play football for 1 year of my life. The rest of the 22 years, I played for free. So it's like, don't just write my story off because I played in the NFL 1 year. Like there was a lot before that and there's a lot after that would make me a semi-normal guy, but really even below that. So what I would encourage people to do is start educating themselves. Now, you don't even need to read the book. You can get the app Audible. Get the book and just listen to it if you don't want to read it. Mm-hmm. And then you decide, okay, what steps can I take from this book and what steps can I put in place to start working towards making this decision to invest? And then you decide what it is. Buy raw land, buy apartments. I've seen people all the time, well, I don't have the money. One thing I've learned about real estate, if it's a good deal, the money will find it. So if you don't have the money and you don't want to take all the risk, then really educate yourself on how to put together pro formas, how to find deals. We call it bird dogging. How do you go bird dog the deal put the pro forma together, tie it up, and then, go get investors to invest in the deal for you. It's like, so it's really, I just don't believe in excuses, man. So my wife and I put up a post, and I wasn't intended for it to do all this, but I was just trying to give God the glory, because in my life, I've always just kind of went on to the next thing. I've never stopped and tried to. So my wife's on me about doing better at celebrating. But we put up a post where her and I had bought a strip center in Asheville. It was like a Starbucks, Buffalo Wild Wings, whatever. And then it ended up, I guess it went viral. One of my cousins sent me a picture. It was like 850,000 shares. I think that thing's over 1 million shares now. And I just got on there, and people went right to hating. Oh, well, he played in the league, so I ain't even, like, you know what I mean? Oh, well, he said in the write-up, his mama or something. No, I was saying that my mom taught us what she could. But obviously she didn't teach me this. Financial literacy, investing, and starting other businesses. So it wasn't that I'm shitting on my mom. That's my mother. I love her. But people just, I think they spend so much time trying to pick. Like I always say, it's a great quote I like. Zig Ziglar says, don't be distracted by people, because the only taste of success that they will ever have or encounter is taking a bite out of you. So it's like, all they got time to do is sit on the internet and pick you apart, versus saying, what can I learn from this brother? How can I be encouraged by his story? And how can I take one nugget and go and implement it in my own life? And so my encouragement would be podcast, Audible, reading, and then decide a game plan and actually go do it. Give yourself an expiration date. That's the other one I like using. Like, I'm doing this by June of 2020. And here's the last thing I'll leave you with before we go.
Yep.
This is that when people have someone else let them down, they get pissed off, they get mad, they hold that person accountable. They're like, David, man, you didn't show up to lunch, you let me down, you had my back. But they don't hold themselves accountable to that same standard. What people don't understand is, like, at this point, I have over 250 people that work for me directly or indirectly. They think I'm hard on them. I'm 50 times harder on myself. So I'm not going to hold someone else to a higher standard than I hold myself. And I see that a lot on the internet. They want to hate and pick other people apart. But then they told themselves they were going to get in the gym for the new year. It's one weekend. They ain't went to the gym one time. Why are you not hating on yourself and getting mad at yourself for not doing that? So raise the standard on your self-expectation versus the expectation for everybody else. Like, oh, Donald Trump this. But okay, but what am I doing that's not helping myself? And that's really self-actualization is something that I always try to focus on. Like, how can I really look at myself and hold myself accountable to a standard this high? So,
yeah, that's a good thing to leave with, man. I want to say this just on the record too, right before you go. People should understand about your story about playing 1 year in the NFL. That's like having a job.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like I think it's because it's NFL. They're like, oh, that must mean he had $40 million in the account. Like, dude, he just got in. Yes, he was amazing coming in, but you got injured, and it was because one of my uncles got drafted and for baseball. So I know about what can happen after
1 year.
It's just like it's like having a good job for a year.
1 year.
Good job for a year, which a lot of people can accomplish. Go to school and get yourself a good job when you get out or something, and then save some of the money, and then that money to invest or get yourself in. I mean, I think you know how it is. People just want to. It's tougher to look in the mirror and say, I didn't take the action. I messed up. I'm responsible.
Yes.
Issue. I have something I didn't deal with when I was a child. Whatever the issue is, because that's probably something like that. It's tougher to do that, I think, and I think that's why people say the crazy things that they say. So that's my take.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the time, bro.
Yeah.
I'm out in San Diego. I'm gonna look you up, man. Maybe we can go have some coffee.
Yeah, I got my office is right by I don't know if you've ever been out here before, but it's cool down there. That's where the bay is and everything. So
yeah. I'm gonna look you up, bro. I'm down there. My wife and I actually I'm gonna put at some point when I expand outside the state of Texas, I'm coming to San Diego.
Man, let me know. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I know I gotta let you get back to work. So I got a lot of stuff I gotta get into, but yeah, I appreciate the time, man. It's great. And hopefully people learn something from this and go do something. That's
that's
what.
cool. You know, that's my motivation, man. At this point, I lost my mom and my dad in 18. I didn't have a relationship with my dad, a great relationship, but it's my dad. And I just learned that, man, all I'm trying to leave is breadcrumbs and a footprint, you know, because I know what it feels like with no flashlight trying to get through the wilderness.
Yep.
I didn't have nobody to guide me. And I'm not saying that once again to sound cool or sound important, but always now I have this mindset. You drop me in the desert right now, I'll find my way to the water. I'm gonna find my way to succeed. I'm gonna find my way to eat. That's just, it is what it is. And if I didn't learn anything from this journey of being paralyzed, coming from where I came from, and now trying to rebuild myself again and again, is that, bro, look inside yourself. It's already in you. God has given you everything you need. You just gotta look inside yourself because He's already inserted in you what you need. So, man, I appreciate your time, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, let me know when you're in town.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See you, bro.
I appreciate you.
All right.